Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of Mindful Mastery Live. The skills we all need sometimes when stress gets high and emotions strong. Here we're going to learn about the skills and tricks everyone needs sometimes, and especially now during these stressful times. And we're also trying to bring on the excellent psychologists, clinicians, and researchers that you'll never find because they're so busy doing their work. They're not out there marketing themselves like some other people that you might find easily, but aren't as well trained. So today I'm thrilled to have Dr. Jessica Borushok, who we call Dr. Jessica because Borushok's a mouthful, who is the founder and creator of this wonderful new program called the Busy Mind Reboot, which is an affordable program online where you can in 30 days learn all the skills and tricks you need to start fresh when we're finally set free. So couldn't be a better time to bring her on. And here she is. Click my. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you. So let's get started with you telling everybody a little bit about yourself, and people will start trickling in. Hopefully, we'll get some questions about what you do. So give us a little bit of what's a day in the life of psychologist Dr. Jessica like?
Absolutely. I'm a clinical and health psychologist, meaning that I work with folks with anxiety, trauma, depression, and then on the other hand, I also work with folks who are struggling with weight loss, diabetes, chronic pain, chronic health conditions. I work in a private practice doing all telehealth. So I spend a lot of time, just like you and me right now, staring across the screen from another person who might be very far away from me. And I work one-on-one with adults to help them get unstuck from that kind of busy, ruminating, nonstop chatter in their mind. And then in addition to that, I'm really committed to bringing this work to the public. I only have so many hours in a day, and it's important to me that in addition to my one-on-one work with clients, that I can bring these tools and bring all the good work I'm doing in session out to a broader audience.
That's awesome. So you're also doing a lot of what I'm doing, right? That this is why I reached out to you because we have this shared vision of like how can we get these evidence-based tools out to as many people as possible for as affordable as possible. Can you tell us in a nutshell what brought you to the field?
Of course. So I feel like psychologists are always saying, like, I became a psychologist because I wanted to help people. And I think that's a given for everyone. But honestly, for me, I really wanted to help myself. And I'm fascinated by people, why they do things, how they come about to be who they are, and really just wanting to learn more about that and learn what are the evidence-based ways to help me. I struggled when I was in high school and a little bit into college with anxiety, particularly OCD, around a lot of kind of safety and checking behaviors. I was mugged in high school, and that caused me to have a lot of panic attacks when I was in parking garages and things like that. And I became fascinated with understanding how our mind can sometimes work against us, even though it's trying really hard to protect us, but actually making our life a little bit worse. And then what are the skills and the tools and the techniques that you can do to kind of correct course and get someone back on track? So that's
You
why I
know,
became a psychologist.
I love that you say that because, I, of course, say because I love helping people. And there's definite truth to that. Every time I could help someone in my family or my friends step away from a disaster, that's like chocolate for me, primary
Hmm.
reinforcer. Uh, but you're right. Like it is definitely also to help us. My story is I couldn't understand what was going on around me. And then it was like, how do I not do that?
Yeah.
How do I not succumb to these sort of habits and addictions and things that people do? So I think that's a similar story across all of us, and that's the beauty of what we do and sharing it. So tell us a little bit about the Busy Mind Reboot and how that is actualizing your value of helping people and helping yourself.
So the Busy Mind Reboot has been a long time coming. It's something I've been thinking about for a really long time. Back when I was on internship, so that's the kind of clinical training you do right before you get your PhD, I was working in something called primary care mental health integration, which is working in, like, if you went to your doctor's office and you mentioned you were having anxiety or you were
Okay.
struggling with sadness or something like that, they might walk you over to a therapist to talk it over. And it was a really cool concept because it caught people who otherwise might not seek therapy. Maybe they have some bias about who goes to therapy,
Yeah.
or they might not feel that their problems are severe enough to warrant going to therapy. And so I wanted to put out a program where, if you're like me, you're curious about yourself, why you do the things you do, and you want to learn an evidence-based way to just correct course a little and have a little bit more insight and a little bit more tools to get back on track. And so I went through the literature. I thought a lot about how I teach clients and what we talk about with clients, and tried to extract all of that into this 30-day program. So every day it takes no more than 20 to 30 minutes. And then by the end of the month, you should be in a place where you're getting back on track to living your best self, whatever that means to you.
Yeah, so you can see what you said there was really important also, that people wanting to know, right? That when you're starting to have that curiosity of like, could there be something that I'm doing that I could be doing differently? That I think is that willingness entry point, that where we pull people in. But I think it's also important for people to know that as young as Dr. Jessica looks, she has a huge background of important stuff. You've published what, like 3 or 4 books?
Yeah, I've co-authored 3 books, and then I wrote called Master Guide to Stress, kind of a little small, quick guide, so we're not
Nice.
spending hours and hours reading information that could be shared in 30 minutes. And then
Awesome.
a card deck.
Yeah, the card decks are really popular, right?
Oh
Tell
yeah.
people about those card decks.
So and they're a little too far away for me to grab right now. Should have been a little bit
Oh,
more prepared. But
yeah.
it's similar to a normal card deck, but each card has a metaphor, an exercise, a thought provoking question on it to help you connect with your full experience. So, the thoughts, feelings, memories, physical sensations that might show up, that might be a little bit painful or difficult to come in contact with, help you connect a little bit more to the present moment and notice some of these patterns that you find yourself in when you're kind of just reacting to everything that's showing up, and then
Yeah.
how to connect with what is most important to you in your life rather than getting sucked into this kind of immediate impulse reacting and responding to everything that's happening around you. So those cards are a great way, whether using them in therapy or just a daily practice. I'll pick one out at random sometimes, and practicing just incorporating those skills in a tiny bite-sized way.
So can you share a scenario or an, an abridged client example that's obviously a compilation of all your clients and not really one client, but a great scenario of success where someone went from not really recognizing what was going on in their life, and having some significant difficulties or struggles with stress and strong emotions, and then used your process and had a successful experience.
Yes, definitely. There's one type of client that pops into my mind that's kind of an amalgamation of a couple of different clients I've had. But oftentimes I'll have clients come into my office who have tried everything. They've worked really hard and they're just stuck in their head. Maybe it's a thought about their, ability to do
Sorry
something.
about the dog.
It's okay. I love pet cameos. It's great.
There you go.
Oh my goodness, aren't
My
you a
my
cutie?
autism spectrum overly anxious beagle basset.
Aren't all beagles like that?
Yeah. Well, this one's special. Um, okay, so they're in their heads. They can't get unstuck. Go on, please.
Absolutely. They're very good problem solvers. A lot of clients
Yeah.
that I come across who I work very well with are great problem solving. They're great at planning and analyzing and coming up with a schedule or with a way to attack the problem. The problem is that this is not an external issue, right? This isn't a schedule to fix. This isn't something that we broke or knocked over or need to get replaced or a project we have to do at work. This is a thought or maybe a series of thoughts that keep popping up over and over again. And clients will come in and say, I've tried everything. I've tried to talk back to the thought. I've tried to rationalize why what my mind is saying isn't true, and I end up exhausted. And one of the most beautiful things to see is that moment when it clicks, when clients pause and take a step back and go, oh, it's not that I'm not trying hard enough. It's that the thing I'm doing to try to fix the solution doesn't work.
Right, right, exactly.
And you come to this point where you realize, okay, I actually can't snap my fingers and make this thought go away permanently. And the way I've been trying to get rid of it, maybe by rationalizing, by overanalyzing, by planning, or by things like exercising a bunch or watching Netflix or avoiding it or helping other people. I find a lot of my therapist friends get stuck in the I don't deal with my own problems. I'm going to go help other
I have
people.
no idea what you're talking about.
Absolutely none at all. None at all. I don't do that. Of course not.
I love how you phrase that. We talk about the relationship to our experience, right? But you are calling it something a little bit different, right? It's not what's happening, but how you're coping with it, or it's what you're doing to try to get rid of it, right?
Exactly. It's there. We're not going to look, we all have stuff that shows up in our life because we've all dealt with stuff. We've all experienced pain and rejection and heartbreak and fear and insecurities. Mine might be different than yours, but I can guarantee that we've both experienced that. So just start off with this goal of I'm going to go through life and never experience pain is setting yourself up for failure. When we can acknowledge, okay, stuff I don't want to feel shows up sometimes.
Yeah.
And the way I've been trying to deal with it in the past doesn't work. That is where we can create space to come up with a new way to relate to that rather
So
than letting it become you.
yes, exactly. And so you and I, we're singing to the choir to each other, right here.
Yes.
I think that generationally, we have different expectations of how smoothly life should go. As we're in the pandemic, people have reflected on prior generations, certainly the greatest generation, where, at the beginning of the 20th century, they went through the Spanish flu, World War I, World War II, the Depression, right? And they kept showing up, right? So do you think that we have a generational difference in our ability to tolerate or our expectations about how much discomfort we should have to endure?
I think my generation, we grew up and are entering the workforce in an era where you don't stay in the same job for 20 or 30 years until
For
you
sure,
retire.
for
It's
sure.
difficult to uh, survive with a one income household. Most
Yeah,
people are getting married later. And so you're entering this weird phase of life that maybe your parents or definitely grandparents never experienced
for
before,
sure.
where it gives you this opportunity to focus on growth. And I think millennials are actually very values driven. You see people
Oh, for sure. I
traveling
agree.
or taking jobs that aren't for the purpose of just kind of getting a paycheck, but are following their passion.
Yeah,
So on that side of things, I think we've actually made a lot of progress.
I agree.
I think one of the difficult messages that tends to come up is this idea that we do all of this work and then at the end everything will be fine and we'll have a great successful life, and
Yeah.
that's the part I think we still have a little work to do.
And then there's actually an old psychological concept called the just world hypothesis, where or just world beliefs, where and I remember learning about this as an undergrad going, oh, I think I'm totally guilty of that. That if I work hard, if I'm a good girl, if I do all the right things, life will just, give me, lemonade.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
um,
insightful enough. I've put in all this work. I've like connected with my vulnerable self, and now I'll be strong and invincible.
yeah,
And you will be strong and invincible, but you'll also experience pain.
yeah. The
And
pain.
and that's that balance we still need to find.
I think the old expression is that pain is ubiquitous, or pain will happen. Suffering is optional.
Yes. 100% agree with you
Getting
there.
stuck in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so you were telling us about this client that came in, and she was a task oriented, and then she started to have this different relationship, or to realize what she was doing. So can you tell us a little bit about what she was doing and how she walked through what I call the willingness window? Because most people, like, that's where they get stuck. It's very easy to know. Well, actually, it's not easy. It's the first step is know your stuff. know
Yeah.
your what I call emotional habit patterns.
Hmm.
Um, and then the next step is willingness to shift in the presence of those emotional habit patterns. Can you tell us how that person made her shift?
Yes, and I love that you said patterns because that is, and I know you talk about patterns a lot. I know in your book that's a big thing you dive deep
Yeah,
into. And I think that's what it's really about. A lot of times when we're getting stuck, we're looking at an incident just in isolation because maybe it seems this problem seems unique compared to other problems. But when we take a step back and we
yeah,
notice patterns, we notice, oh, wait a second, I've been trying to do this same thing to make this problem go away or to not feel scared or feel
yeah,
anxious for a long time.
yeah,
And I think once we can step back and see, oh, this is just the same stuff with different dressing, then you have this kind of aha moment where a client might say, okay, I'm willing to try something different
yeah,
because it finally sinks in that it's not that they haven't tried hard enough on this. They've been doing this for a long time.
yeah.
And honestly, I face it as an experiment. Let's just try. You can always go back to how you've done things before.
Oh,
We know
nice.
what's
Yeah.
going to happen if you do that. You can
Yeah,
always go back on it. And we can do it as slowly as you want it to happen. Sometimes
right.
folks feel like, oh, I have to reject everything I've ever learned before and jump into something new. And
Yeah.
that's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that is because we tend to be all or none as humans, right? And especially when in the presence of an emotion. Oh, okay, fine. I'll just throw away my whole business and I'll be a messy slob, says the perfectionist, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I'll just be
But
useless forever.
yeah, so I like to tell people, and I say this often, that when setting values-driven goals, right, and making that shift, we try to set incremental goals. So an optimal, like I'm making
I
perfect
know.
change 5 days a week. Um, Acceptable change 3 days a week. A good strong pass starting off one time a week. Just setting these accessible goals. But what about when it's thinking, right?
Well,
What?
I've actually had a lot of clients. The exercise thing really brought up because it's my background. My
Right.
dissertation was on physical activity.
Love that.
But you actually see when you work with folks in the health realm, a lot of these thoughts come up. I've had clients before who have a lot of thoughts about their abilities and about the way that they look. That they're ugly, that they're fat, that no one could ever love them until they fit into a certain size pants, that they can't
Yeah.
even go to the gym because everyone's going to be thinking, oh my God, look at that fat person trying to exercise and like making fun of them, which is
Right.
horrible and, makes me want to wrap them up in a giant hug. The difficulty is I can't protect them from that. Those
Yeah.
thoughts are going to be there. And so talking jumping back to what I was saying earlier and taking those
Yeah.
small steps, I've had clients where our first step is putting on exercise clothes and stepping outside of the house and
Nice.
sitting on the front porch for 5 minutes. And
Nice.
then the next step is you get in your car and you drive to the gym and you sit in your car. And then walk into the gym and I'll tell them, I'm like, I don't want you to tell me whether you exercised or not because I actually don't care. That is not our goal. If you do that, that's a thing that you've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my goal is if you walked into the gym, you've been successful. And when we can start to slowly build up these skills, what it forces people to do is actually sit with those thoughts and learn a new
Yes.
way of relating. Because if we jump to the doing right away, it's almost like another distraction technique.
Yeah, exactly. And so what you're describing for people is um, behavioral activation, right?
Yeah.
And really, you're also shaping, right? You're
Mhm.
shaping a new kind of expectation and understanding for people because we tend to not realize that there's so much happening between an intention and an outcome,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That's this sort of functional analysis that we psychologists call it. So you're slowing down the process, you're showing it to them, you're rewarding small approximations to the goal, and you're
Mhm.
also showing them that so it's an exposure, right?
Yeah.
Now watch those thoughts start coming up and still keep moving incrementally forward.
Yes. And
Nice.
in
Love that.
between that, we're focusing on different skills that when these thoughts and feelings show up, when your mind says, "Oh God, I'm such a loser," like my goal is just to put on exercise clothes today. Can we notice
Yeah.
that thought? Can we sit with it? Can we recognize that that thought doesn't dictate who I am? It's just a thing that pops into our head, similar to, "Oh,
Random
here's a
neural
coffee
firing.
mug."
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
can we practice a little bit of self-compassion and allowing ourselves to be grounded in this moment and not let that thought control everything that we do. And then you
Nice.
put the two together, the skills with your thoughts and the skills with your body, and magic happens.
And exactly, that's why I break it down to there's only one thing really in your control, and that's your actions, right?
Yeah.
The rest has to kind of come along, and you're building this new relationship with the emotions and thoughts that come along as you keep putting one foot in front of the other towards
Mhm.
your true north, towards your values, towards what's important in your life. Were there any stuck points where the mind started getting in the way, and work you had to do with some of those kinds of thoughts or thoughts that come?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of resistance and a lot of thoughts and a lot of kind of shame and embarrassment that shows up around, like, oh, I can't even go to the gym for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And doing a lot of work around that to pause and acknowledge, what does progress look like? And exercise is a great way to bring anyone back to that point of understanding how we build up a practice, because
Yeah.
I imagine for the most part everyone has had an experience where maybe they weren't as physically active as they wanted to be, and they started playing a sport in school, or they started running, or they started walking around the block, or learning how to weight lift. And there's this inherent knowledge when it comes to exercise that we don't go from 0 to 100 overnight.
Yet we expect that with our mind skills and our psychological skills, if we even are thinking about psychology as a skill, right? We're
Yes.
so fused with what's happening in there. I think exercise is an excellent metaphor
Yeah.
also.
I'm an intelligent person. I intellectually get this. I should be able to just do this skill right now. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's not how learning works. So when
Yeah.
we can frame it in this perspective of we're building up a skill, a mental skill,
I agree.
then there's some wiggle room for, okay, I'm not going to be great at it at first. It's going to take a couple of trial and errors. We might bite off too much at the beginning and need to scale it back. And that is okay,
Okay. Yeah.
because every step along that path is taking you in the direction of your values.
Exactly. And so there's that non-judgment piece, right? That is so essential in the mindfulness-based therapies and ACT. We just call it coming present and staying committed. Like, how did someone have an aha moment about, oh, that's just my mind?
I've found, and honestly, the same for me personally, is it comes one from repetition. We never get it the
Good.
first
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It's an important
Exactly.
reminder. Even us, educated mental health professionals, we don't get it the first
There,
time.
I mean, I can tell you there. I mean, I remember moments throughout my development, right, at my ripe old age, just like literally stomping my feet and saying, "I cannot believe I did that again," or and that I think is a huge part of what we do too, is normalizing this human experience. Why do we think mental health equals mental illness? That's why this is such a hard sell for so many people.
Yeah.
People are still shocked. I remember going to lunch with an old friend of mine and saying, "Oh, so my therapist says," she goes, "I love that you just said that. Like it was no big deal that you go to therapy." I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
I've had a
because I
lot of
value the health
clients.
of my mind."
Mhm. I've had a lot of clients who are from more kind of medicalized traditional
Yeah,
cultures,
yeah,
who
that's it.
think of therapy as for people who are weak or who have like severe mental illness, and then who've had
Yeah,
to come to therapy because something happened in their life, and they have this really amazing transformation where they say, I didn't realize that this was what therapy was, and now I'm going to go out and
nice,
tell everyone this is great.
nice.
And I think it's because we have this assumption that life gives us everything we need to prepare us for life. But the truth is, it doesn't. We
Yeah.
aren't taught, particularly, I mean, it can vary widely depending on
Mm-hmm.
what our upbringing was, but
Mm-hmm.
everyone is missing some tools and skills for interacting with their inside world and their outside worlds
Yeah.
to be the most effective. And so I think of therapy as just a way to learn a little bit easier ways, better ways to connect with your world so that you can go off and do all the awesome things you want to do in life.
Right.
Very growth-based viewpoint.
Yeah, and it's like, I use the metaphor of the mind-body vehicle that's going along, but the road is changing, right?
Mhm.
So when you have a major life transition or the world just sort of turns on its head, we become habitual because things work, right? A habit is installed because you did it a lot and it worked for you and it made you feel less bad or more good, right? And we
Yep.
just keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that. And then guess what? Then suddenly you have to take care of yourself. Suddenly you've lost your job. Suddenly you've been dumped, and then life happens, right?
Yep.
So um, I think a little bit of uncomfortable stuff happening early on can actually start to train you to be
Mhm.
ready for that. But sometimes, the change is just too dramatic and you need a little help coaching in that transition. How does your program do that? How's your program help? I love that it's 30 days of little
Yes.
bite-sized morsels that people can, so that people don't get too overwhelmed by too much psychology stuff.
Yes. That is exactly my goal is to get again that repetition, that building up the skills. So every day people get a 10-minute video lesson, a 10-minute mindfulness practice, and it starts from the very basic of the breath and then works its way up to a little bit more complex ways of being present and noticing your experience. And then every day you get a image that you can download and add to your lock screen on your phone that just has a simple question or statement on it that helps clue you in to practice something that's important. So for
Nice.
example, one of them could, if we're talking about values, one of them could say, what's important to you in this moment? And so every time you pick up your phone, a billion times a day, you see that and you go, oh, right, I'm supposed to be paying attention to what's important to me. And it forces you to practice that skill as opposed to I'm in a lecture and I tell you like, now you need to go think about your values, and you leave and you think, okay, I'll definitely do that. And then 8 hours go by and you're like, what was that thing I was supposed to do?
So it has that. I love that prompt idea that you literally you're entering someone's world a little bit if
Mhm.
they use that tool, because that's the hardest part about making, like, we can do videos and lectures and chats and give the skills, but the person has to take them, and that has been always the biggest challenge, I think, that taking them into their lives. I love that idea.
Yeah, I wanted to bridge therapy for me is a lot, it models what real life is. If you have difficulty setting boundaries or you have difficulty taking feedback or difficulty expressing yourself, that's going to show up in a therapy context similar to what it would show up in your real life. And that's a great opportunity to practice it. And I was worried that if I only had kind of educational video lessons, that it wouldn't transition into someone's life with them. And this way,
Mhm.
with a little image, it changes every day so you don't get habituated to it and then just be like, nah, I'm ignoring that. You notice it every day,
Yeah.
it's different colors, and it feels very non-threatening, right? If
Right.
we're thinking about like what's important to you in your life, that can feel really heavy, overwhelming
It's
questions
a
to
hard
ask.
question for people to answer, a
Yeah.
really hard question. What do you think people will take away from it? So after their 30 days, so now we're all in lockdown, right? And it's a great time to say, you know what, I've been putting off this work. It's 30 days, right? I can do it while I'm at home. If I'm still at home, we have a little bit more time right now. What are you hoping people will take away from the practice?
My hope is that people are able to get unstuck from their busy minds and live their best self. And what I mean by that is, I hope people can begin to recognize what patterns they get stuck in, to learn how to step back and not be so consumed and overwhelmed and controlled by the thoughts and feelings that show up for you. And that once you get that space and you have that awareness, that you can also clarify what actually is important to you and what do you want to be spending your time doing, and begin to take steps towards that. It's why I say living your best self rather than living your best life. And
Yeah.
yet, with the right tools, we can show up to any moment and be the person that we want to be. We can look in the
Exactly.
mirror and say, like, I'm proud of how I responded in this moment. I am my best self, even if life isn't exactly how I wanted it to be right now. Oh, so people can find me. I am most active on Instagram. So my handle is at Busy Mind Reboot. I'm actually in the process of starting to upload a lot of video content.
Nice.
So if you enjoy kind of 5 to 10 minute videos, learning about different skills, having different practices to do, definitely join me on there because I'll be posting things more regularly. And then also on busymindreboot.com, if you jump onto my website and sign up to be a Busy Mind Insider, I send out a monthly newsletter. I have a lot of exclusive content on there for my subscribers, including MP3 meditations you can download, videos, blogs, a lot of different content,
Cool.
and a discount to my Busy Mind Reboot course. So normally it's $59.99, which I already think is substantially
Super
discounted.
reasonable. Yeah, for
I
what you're
wanted to
getting.
make this accessible and affordable.
Love that.
But if folks become a Busy Mind Insider, you can get it for $12.99. So especially during this time, I really
Twelve
wanted to make
ninety nine for the whole program?
$12.99 for the whole program. So that's like
That's
way
amazing.
less than a dollar. It's less than
Yeah.
50 cents a day.
Yeah.
I really wanted to make sure that this could reach as many people as possible. So those are the two best ways to meet me. And there's information for the course on, if you go to Busy Mind Reboot /course and learn all about it.
Uh, Diane LeMay says that you have excellent meditation videos and they work like a charm.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. I'm so glad to
Nice.
hear that.
Now, doesn't that make you feel good? Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of the background of why you did it and what it is and how it can help us all when stress gets high and emotions strong. And remember, everybody, to check out the Mindful Mastery Skill Weekly newsletter as well. It's not really Skill Weekly, it's every other weekly, so I don't bog your inbox. But you can find that at mindfulmastery.com or follow me at Mindful Mastery on any of your social media channels. All right. Thank you so much, Jessica. Really appreciate it. This is so cool. All
Thank you. It was
right.
nice chatting with you.
Nice chatting with you too. All right. Bye, everyone.